China decides to do something, the execution is extraordinary. The incredible economic progress, technological progress, it's been remarkable because it's happened so quickly, and it continues to be made. China is always surprising the world with new things. For example, electric vehicles, and that has happened in a relatively short period of time. But when China focuses on something, it's remarkable, the outcome and the result. And I think that's something that we're going to see more and more of.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is about China. Before we delve into the nitty-gritty of the matter, take a few moments to watch some statistics and enjoy the beauty and aesthetics that growth and development offers humanity.
This car can fly for 25 minutes with a maximum speed of around 80 miles per hour.
Flying cars were once just a dream in sci-fi movies, but now China has made them a reality. This isn't a prototype or a far-off concept. It's a real working machine, and the world is watching.
China wants to develop what it calls low-altitude economy.
China has made extraordinary economic and technological gains over 4 decades, from manufacturing scale to batteries and electric vehicles, from space and 5G to state-led industrial policy. BloombergNEF reported in May 2025 that China ranked first globally in the lithium-ion battery supply chain, citing low industrial power costs and advanced infrastructure as decisive advantages. The IMF projected China's 2025 growth at roughly 4.8%, reflecting continued resilience despite external pressure. From a human development perspective, UNDP's Ahim Steiner offered insights into China's progress. Take a listen.
So how do you see to analyze a case like China from a human development perspective?
Well, let me go back to the Human Development Report and the index. I mean, if you take just the period, for example, from 1990 to 2022, we saw in China that life expectancy increased by 10 years. In that same period, we also saw incomes jump tenfold. So here are 2 indices of very significant progress. But very important, and what we have repeatedly also studied and highlighted, is the focus on poverty alleviation and eradication. China has done an extraordinary journey from where it was 30, 40 years ago to today, and addressing poverty was one of the central drivers of this. Another one was the investment in education, and with it the capacity of a workforce to also develop technological advances that today allow China to be a leader in some of the digital clean energy domains. You mentioned earlier on also electric vehicles. These are the kind of products of a very deliberate and long-term investment strategy in people, but also in technological progress. And I think perhaps the most significant development over time has been China's ability to also recognize that air quality, biodiversity, climate change, carbon emissions are going to erode that development progress if they're not addressed. And so China has invested very heavily in decarbonization, the green transition, the green finance system. All of these are now drivers in China's ability to build a 21st century economy that not only has lifted hundreds of millions of people, but will also for the next generation ensure that it is able to thrive on this planet and in our world. And in that sense, I think the Human Development Report over these decades shows a remarkable journey in development progress.
However, not everyone is happy with China's growth and resilience. Why? Let's find out. The United States framed these gains as the product of unfair trade and technology practices. As reported by Reuters, following a Section 301 investigation, Washington imposed tariffs in 2018 to 2019 on roughly $370 billion of Chinese imports, alleging intellectual property violations and forced tech transfer. This is pointing to President Trump's first term in office and shows consistency in his actions against China. Specifically, the Section 301 investigation concluded that China's practices related to intellectual property theft, forced technology transfers, and discriminatory licensing, harming U.S. commerce. As such, Trump imposed a series of escalating tariffs, including 25% tariffs on about $250 billion of imports. And according to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, Executive Office of the President, an additional 10 to 15% tariffs on roughly $300 billion more, phased in later. These measures marked a significant shift in U.S.-China trade relations and were central to the broader trade war that unfolded during that period, including now. Of course, China didn't just concede quietly. It retaliated with counter-tariffs, matching U.S. rounds through 2018 as both sides escalated. Reuters' timeline documented the tit-for-tat measures across steel, aluminium, electronics, machinery, and agriculture. In January 2020, the two governments signed a Phase 1 agreement. The Peterson Institute for International Economics assessed in February 2021 that the deal's centerpiece, China's pledge to purchase an extra $200 billion of U.S. goods and services over 2020 to 2021, fell short, with structural disputes left unresolved. Thus, a brief de-escalation did not end the conflict. When Trump lost to Biden, who became the 46th president of the U.S., the conflict continued. Reuters reported in May 2024 that President Biden kept the Trump-era tariffs and raised others, including quadrupling duties on Chinese electric vehicles to above 100%, up from 25%, and doubling some semiconductor tariffs to 50%. The White House fact sheet framed the hikes as a response to non-market practices and China's overcapacity in the electric vehicle sector. Additionally, the Biden administration doubled the tariff on Chinese-made chips to 50%. This was scheduled to take effect in 2025, aligning with Biden's broader push to bolster domestic semiconductor manufacturing through initiatives like the CHIPS and Science Act. What does this reveal to you? It reveals that both Democrats and Republicans should agree on Trump's trade war against China. It's an agenda both have worked on. Therefore, it is appropriate to conclude that Trump's tariffs war against China is a continuation of his 2018 agenda endorsed by the Biden administration that took over in 2021. Notwithstanding, Trump still has some negatives about the Biden administration's handling of the situation. Besides, he highlights a contradiction in U.S. relations with China. Take a listen.
President Xi would like me to come to China. It's a very important relationship. As you know, we're taking a lot of money in from China because of the tariffs and different things, and it's a very important relationship. We're going to get along good with China. I hear so many stories about we're not going to allow their students. We're going to allow their students to come in. We're going to allow. It's very important. 600,000 students. It's very important. But we're going to get along with China. But it's a different relationship that we have now with China. It's a much better relationship economically than it was before. With Biden, boy, what he allowed they just took him to the cleaners.
Trade lawyers have noted that additional hikes through 2025 to 2026 are meant to give US manufacturers time to diversify supply chains. But if the plan is to throttle China's rise, the results are mixed. BloombergNEF's 2025 outlook described China's electric vehicle ecosystem as dominant, while warning of demand uncertainty in the US amid policy shifts. At the macro level, according to Reuters, the IMF raised its 2025 emerging economy forecast on an improved China view, even as property and debt headwinds persisted. In short, pressure has slowed but not reversed China's long-term capabilities. Geopolitically, Beijing has deepened ties beyond the US orbit. Reuters reported that BRICS announced a major expansion in August 2023, inviting Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, Iran, Ethiopia, and initially Argentina, to join, explicitly to reshuffle an outdated order. Saudi state media later confirmed Riyadh's formal entry on January 2, 2024. With Moscow, China proclaimed a partnership of no limits in a February 2022 joint statement, opposing NATO expansion and AUKUS while aligning on Taiwan and Ukraine narratives, as Reuters and the Kremlin readout recorded. India's position is more complex. New Delhi is a BRICS member yet a core player in the Quad with the US, Japan, and Australia. Reuters has described this grouping as a counterweight to China's regional influence. This divergence shows a world tilting toward multipolarity, not simple blocks. Has Washington backed down? The record suggests recalibration, not retreat. After Phase 1 paused escalation, subsequent policy broadened screening and tariffs rather than abandoning them. Reuters reported in May 2025 that Trump's first-term Section 301 actions covered $370 billion, while Biden's 2024 to 2025 measures retained and raised key rates in electric vehicles, chips, and clean tech. In other words, the US has hardened strategic trade controls in sectors seen as decisive for future power. China, for its part, has absorbed costs and rechanneled growth, leveraging scale, industrial policy, and South-South diplomacy. BloombergNEF and IMF snapshots indicate continued momentum in batteries and moderate GDP growth. BRICS expansion signals diplomatic hedging against dollar-centric dominance. The deeper question is not simply who wins a tariff war, but what kind of order emerges from it. Reuters official documents show the US is trying to ring-fence advanced technologies while preserving supply chain leverage. But China is building parallel capacity and currency-agnostic partnerships. If multipolarity consolidates, the Global South can bargain for better terms, but only if financing, standards, and digital rules are not captured by a new oligopoly of power. So, are we approaching a world where capitalism loses its grip as a tool of domination over the Global South? The evidence points to contestation rather than surrender. The US has shifted from neoliberal laissez-faire to strategic protection in critical sectors. China has fused markets with state direction to climb value chains. BRICS is testing alternative venues of influence. What weakens domination is not a single tariff or summit, but whether new institutions, from payments to standards, from climate finance to data rules, are built to serve producers and workers in the Global South, not just great power supply chains. In reported speech, Reuters documented the origin and scale of the 2018 to 2019 tariffs and China's retaliation. The Peterson Institute concluded Phase 1 under-delivered. The White House and Reuters confirmed 2024 to 2025 tariff hikes in electric vehicles and semiconductors. BloombergNEF and the IMF described China's enduring capacity in batteries and steady growth, and Reuters chronicled BRICS expansion aimed at reshaping an outdated order. The verdict is unfinished. The struggle is not just US versus China, but who writes the rules of the next economy, and whether the global south will finally move from being a market and a mine to being a rule maker and a maker of value.
You have just seen the world through a different lens. Subscribe, comment, share, and help amplify voices that deserve to be heard. Until next time, keep looking deeper. Liberation lens. Perspective matters.